Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today you join me riding in the picturesque Peak District, where I want to share with you an exclusive, explosive, extraordinary and frankly exhausting interview with Britain's most ludicrous conspiracy theorist, the Gateshead gunman himself, accidental comedian Mark the Lying Fraud Steele. Not to be confused with intentional comedian Mark Steele, no third E. And why have I chosen the Peak District to showcase a moron from Gateshead? Because with Mark Steele, I think our nation's fuckwits have finally reached peak stupidity. During one of our production meetings earlier this year, one of the producers suggested, "Why don't you ask Mark Steele to do an interview?" While the rest of the room nodded in agreement, I had one problem with it.
The man is mentally ill.
No, not that, because I wasn't convinced of that. My problem is that I think he's more of a disingenuous, sneaky grifter than the gullible fuckwits who actually fall for and genuinely believe these ridiculous, baseless nonsense that he spouts. Now, he knows that he has never spent 35 years working at the Ministry of Defence. He knows he's not a weapons expert, despite repeatedly, publicly claiming to be one. He knows the vast majority of people can see straight through his claims. He knows everyone laughs at him, but he doesn't care. All he's concerned about is getting money from the few people who are too paranoid and gullible to fact check. So while he's happy talking unchallenged into a microphone or a 1990s webcam, a back and forth conversation, especially with somebody who can read and who debunks conspiracy claims for fun, probably wouldn't appeal to him. Oh, how wrong I was.
Who the hell is that?
For those who don't know who this man is, wearing sunglasses indoors like a shit Bono impersonator.
He is not Bono, he's rubbish.
He is, isn't it?
Mark Steele is a conspiracy theorist from Gateshead in the northeast of England. He claims to be a weapons expert with over 35 years experience at the Ministry of Defence. But in reality, where the rest of us live, he left school at 16 and shot an innocent bystander when he was either 32 or 33, depending on whether he'd had his birthday that year, and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Now, I believe he served 4 or 5 years of that sentence, but as you'll read in the interview, he's not a fan of directly answering simple questions. He expects you to believe that somehow, between the ages of 16 and 38, he spent 35 years working for the Ministry of Defence. He can't have worked for them after his conviction because violent ex-convicts don't pass Ministry of Defence vetting. Career-wise, he's worked as a fence fitter, a pub bouncer or doorman, and for a small motorcycle helmet manufacturer that his twin brother is one of the directors of. The one recorded instance of him having any contact with a weapon was when, while working as a doorman, he got into an argument with a man and while waving a gun around like a fucking idiot, shot an innocent bystander in the face. A teenage girl who was left with permanent physical and mental scars and disabilities. And he has the cheek to pretend to be a fucking expert. Sorry, but that is the behaviour of a classless, scummy, vile piece of shit. His hobbies include threatening MPs and councillors, making baseless conspiracy claims, and conning apopheniacs from their money. After some paradigm shifting, blue sky thinking, and circling back to put a pin in the idea of an interview on the road motorcycling, we decided to stop playing business bullshit bingo and start planning the video. Knowing that when challenged in the wild, conspiracy theorists tend to either flee or freeze on the spot and go into soundboard mode, we knew that we would need a fixed set of questions to use as the main interview while being prepared for multiple additional threads and tangents to be created in an attempt to make me forget about the initial interview. Look, I know it's a stupid idea to think that I'd actually forget why I was talking to him in the first place, but this is a naive, childish tactic I see these people use all the time. It never works, but they always seem to try it. Dr. Theo Ellison told us, It's a rudimentary tactic most people grow out of by their early teens. It's quite concerning to see a 64-year-old who actually thinks this is going to work. We decided on a 6-month window, and our analysts calculated that should be sufficient for 13 questions. A baker's dozen, or rather, a faker's dozen. The timing couldn't have been better. Mark's special day was fast approaching, and it meant the project would be finished in time to plan a Christmassy video for the channel. And so, on April Fool's Day of this year, I emailed Mark Steele. A couple of days later, I noticed a reply. It wasn't necessarily Mark though, it could have been his just as evil twin Graham, or some other paranoid crank simply volunteering to answer emails on Mark's behalf. But I asked for confirmation and the person gave it. So if it wasn't you, Mark, you have another fraud in your ranks besides you and Graham. This confirmation would be the first and last time Mark was actually able to directly answer a question. I explained that I wanted to interview him about his baseless conspiracy claims of children being microwaved in their beds by 5G, Bill Gates injecting everyone with a magic microchip that shrinks itself down to be small enough to fit through the needle of a syringe, and then re-embiggens itself once inside the... what?
Embiggens? Never heard that word before I moved to Springfield.
I don't know why. It's a perfectly cromulent word.
Hi, I have a tiny channel on YouTube, and I'm looking to interview misinformation grifters, paranoid conspiracy cranks, and people who take apophenia seriously. It's part of a piece looking at how many of these nutters are genuinely this paranoid and able to think critically or fact-check anything, and how many are simply grifters. I was hoping Mark Steele would be willing to drop the act for a few minutes to answer a few simple questions. Strangely, the response I got was, "We can see debate is not your thing but burner." Ugh. His first reply was only 10 words, and I already knew I was dealing with a semi-literate moron. What debate? I've already shown you that I'm well aware it's all bollocks. I've asked for an interview, not a debate. Plus, children being microwaved in their beds? There's no debate to be had. And book burner? What the absolute fuck is this idiot rambling on about? Now, I'm no doctor, but this man clearly has some sort of deficiency when it comes to reading comprehension, paying attention, and focusing on the matter at hand. I would constantly have to remind him that I was simply asking for an interview, and point out that the quotes he kept attributing to me were not mine. He would claim to know everything about me, yet constantly changed my supposed career. According to him, in the last 6 months alone, I have worked as a 77th Brigade implant, a government hitman, a far-left magician, a far-right racist, a far-left protester, an undercover police officer, a teacher, Sir Keir Starmer's assistant, Boris Johnson's advisor, and someone working in the marketing department for Big Pharma. It's not clear whether he thought I was all these things at the same time or not, as any attempt to clarify simply resulted in more claims, more projection, more deflection.
Classic Ponchi. Yeah, always deflecting.
But on one particular day, Mark had a bit of an episode, and in the space of 2 minutes, I went from 77th Brigade, my 4th stint with them, by the way, to the police, my 3rd stint with them, to being a first-time teacher. On several occasions, he'd go full circle, forgetting all the replies he'd sent and starting back with his original accusation and misattributed quotes. Keeping Mark focused on the interview questions was proving to be very tricky. He claimed to have tracked down my location, presumably from the email headers, and my MAC address, but then he went shy when I asked him what road I'm on, what town or city I'm in, even what country I'm in, or for any digit from my MAC address. Incidentally, his address, which is publicly available on Google Street View, shows him sitting in the window grifting on his computer. After a few weeks of suffering humiliation after humiliation, he started with the evidence. First, he sent me a low-res meme that at 200 pixels across is completely unreadable. I asked him for a high-res copy so that I could fact-check the content, asked if he could tell me what any of the text said, but he just changed the subject and refused to acknowledge even sending it in the first place. This happened a further 5 times. He sent me numerous articles from mainstream media websites. The Daily Mail, the BBC, The Guardian, several local newspapers owned by Reach plc. Yes, the same mainstream media that he claims always lies were now being cited by this imbecile. I asked him several times why he would cite sources that he constantly accuses of being unreliable and in on his imaginary conspiracy, but again, he would just change the subject and refuse to acknowledge sending the links. He did the same with links to YouTube videos, all of which had already been taken down, which just goes to show that he doesn't fact check anything and he has no fucking idea what he's doing. He invited me to several made-up events, some fictional upcoming genocide tribunals and trials, but then went silent when asked for dates and locations of these events so that I could go. But as long as I kept mocking him and easily pointing out the many, many flaws in his ridiculous logic, he would continue to answer the odd interview question that I slipped in here and there. Now, I've never conducted an interview in this way before, but at least I was finally getting some answers, even if at one point I had to start rephrasing them to be yes or no answers and tell him to change the subject and talk more bollocks if the answer is yes. It works. At the end of August, we here in the UK enjoyed a bank holiday. It's basically a free day off work for a lot of people, double time or a day's holiday in lieu for most of the rest. And the weather was lovely, so I was out riding my motorbike for most of it. I saw some friends, caught up with some family, had some lovely food, really nice time. Fuck me, my inbox blew up. He was not happy at having nobody to talk to all weekend.
He was livid.
And that was when it hit me. Yes, he's grifting. Yes, he's a pathological liar who makes the most ridiculous, baseless claims. And yes, he should be mocked accordingly. But is he just doing it for the money? Or is attention his currency du jour? As a twin, he would have had to split all the attention with his brother when they were kids. And if his brother could have read at the level of even a 6-year-old, the parents would have considered Graham to be some sort of genius compared to Mark. And so the only time since then that he's got any attention was when he shot the wrong person and got sent to prison. And then again when he started threatening MPs and council staff and got sent to court. It's not like he's got much to lose. So he's not as arsed as most people whether the attention he gets is positive or negative, just that someone, somewhere, is paying him some. It even showed in some of the replies when read through a different lens. I started to feel bad, like I was telling a small child there was no Santa or something. But then I remembered this man took over £30,000 in donations from one of his fundraisers and kept it. He conned this idiot into believing his nonsense and then buggered off when the man lost his job, his family and his home due to his new fuckwitted makeover. He now lives in a shed in a field and Mark Steele could not give a shit. Mark has also threatened to kidnap Liz Twist MP simply for not taking his batshit crazy claims seriously. So obviously I stopped feeling sorry for him and carried on the interview. There are only so many times you can ask a simple question and receive a steaming pile of steel by reply before you start to get bored and have a little fun. So I did. First, I made my own conspiracy evidence. Measuring in at a whopping 200 pixels by 150 pixels, which, as Mark's email to me demonstrates, is a perfectly acceptable size for concrete evidence. Here you go. Everything you need to debunk every claim you've ever made or ever will make. It uses your own logic, of course, so there's no way you can get around it without exposing your own grift. Checkmate, con man. This broke Mark Steele to the point where he couldn't even decide who he was. First, he wasn't Mark anymore. Then he was, and then finally he signed off an email as Oxygen Stealer. On this thread, he managed to ignore 6 simple questions and was unable to debunk my evidence. I had been wondering if he even reads the replies at all before replying himself, as the flow of conversation suggests he just has a load of sentences open in Word and just copies and pastes 1 or 2 at random when he gets an email. To test this, I started editing what he'd sent me and replying to my cheeky edit instead of what he'd actually written. He didn't notice at all. I mean, look at this shit. He emails me, "Stop the charade and tell us how many injections did you take so we can have a giggle," on a thread where he's now claiming I work directly for Keir Starmer, and this email was sent to me as a direct reply to, "Fuck me, another rapid career change? Aren't you at least a little bit impressed at how I keep getting hired for jobs that require a lot of training and experience that I don't have or show any interest in?" Now, if you sent that to someone about "Stop the charade and tell us how many injections did you have," wouldn't you expect a reply about vaccines, Starmer, or something at least loosely connected with something in this email thread? Something along the lines of, "I took 2 plus a booster and I'm still alive," or "Why don't you cry about all the vaccinations you had when you were growing up, you twat?" Or "Why would Keir Starmer hire a teacher, according to the last career change you claimed I make, to mock delusional conmen via email?" But instead, I actually replied, "Mate, you can't seriously expect me to believe this nonsense." Well, wouldn't that prompt you to look at what I'm replying to, especially considering we had about 7 email threads on the go at the time? Nope, not with Mark Steele. He probably thought he'd found a kindred spirit. At this point, I was very conscious that this video would make Mark look like an unhinged moron. In order to keep it impartial and give Mark every opportunity to stop coming across as an unhinged moron, I thought I'd find some common ground for yet another thread.
Oh, friend!
His response: "Would love to discuss this chip. You will reap what you sow," and a link to a YouTube video. I got the popcorn ready, settled down to watch the comedy he'd linked. Video unavailable. I asked if he'd posted the wrong link or if he'd just blindly shared any old shit. And he changed the subject yet again. At this point, as we pass the 6-month mark, it's clear that Mark Steele is delusional, only semi-literate, and appears to have some pretty severe mental health issues that make him susceptible to taking baseless conspiracy claims as fact without any thought or verification whatsoever. However, this still doesn't rule him out as a grifter who knows full well 5G is just the 5th generation of mobile phone infrastructure. I came to the conclusion that any attempt at a conversational interview would be futile. The email replies showed that he would just dodge questions and ramble on with more baseless claims, and the threats he made suggested that if things didn't go his way, potentially someone standing in our vicinity could end up being shot. His approach reminded me of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is also delusional, semi-literate, and appears to have some mental health issues that render her susceptible to taking baseless conspiracy claims as fact without any thought or verification.
Mr. Gazpacho!
But with both of them, it's hard to gauge how much is their stupidity and how much is them knowingly spreading misinformation to stupid supporters, because you simply can't get a straight answer to a simple question. While the ongoing lack of deaths from 5G and vaccines have seen the movement all but die off, leading to the grifters moving on to new cons, Richard Vobes and his old money that's no longer in circulation, Jamie Freeman and Crystal's Angels and Mystic Woo, and some others jumping on the piss drinking bandwagon, they all seem to be leaving Mark behind. Hi, Editor L here. Well, I was having trouble trying to decide whether Mark is more grifter or delusional idiot, and he actually confirmed it for me because he felt the need to send me this meme with a forged article on it. Obviously, first thing I did when I received this was Google the headline, and the first result I found was the original source, All the details match on there, apart from the article itself. As you can see, Mark has used the wrong font size, the wrong font family, the wrong font weight. He's added superfluous quotation marks, and overall, his attempt at forging a news article less convincing than a Nigerian prince. I've asked him on numerous occasions since then why he actually felt the need to forge an article, and you guessed it, he changes the subject, he runs away, and he never even acknowledges sending it in the first place. So yeah, delusional to a point, but definitely a con man. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you like the video, please give it a like. If you made it this far, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, cheers.